Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. Today's show is brought to you by UpNote. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my special guest, second week in a row, Alex Gio. Hey, Alex.
Hey, John. I'm back.
You are back. It's good to have you. Good to have you. We've got some things to talk about that happened on the site this week. I did this incredibly deep dive on Apple Maps this week because I know everybody is wondering what the Yerba Buena Gardens looks like in 3D. And I've got a screenshot of that, as well as the Ferry Building in San Francisco. And you can see many other landmarks in San Francisco, but guess what? Only San Francisco. I guess that's not quite right. It's the whole Bay Area. There's some landmarks in Berkeley and in Oakland and San Jose and Santa Clara, places like that. And they're supposed to have more of these 3D buildings and landmarks from Los Angeles, New York, and London, which were kind of the three locations that got the guides last summer. Those locations are going to be there supposedly by the time the OS is released this fall, but right now they're not there. So if you want to see these things, you have to be on the beta and you have to go to the San Francisco area. But there's a whole lot more beyond that. I cover a lot of things like the expansion and refinement of guides. The place cards have all been redesigned pretty extensively with a lot of new information and things like that. And you can zoom out all the way to a globe view of the Earth. And while you may not do that too often, zoom out and spin around on the globe, it is kind of a convenient way to move around the Earth in the app. And then as you zoom in, there's a lot more detail of the terrain. Because I think, Apple Maps historically has been very focused on cities and towns and directions and roads and that sort of thing. But now there are place cards for places like deserts and mountains and lakes and oceans and things like that. And as you zoom in, you can see elevation of things like mountains, and you can have different color coding for deserts and all that sort of thing. So it's really nice. I mean, it's a very solid update, and I'm looking forward to it. I've been using it. It's still haven't been away from home that much, but I have used it around town, and it is handy to have things like new warnings about road construction and lane closures and traffic delays and that sort of thing. So there's a ton of different new things in here, and I've kind of cataloged them all. And the nice thing is they're basically the same on all platforms. There's some very subtle differences that I point out here and there, but for the most part, they're exactly the same.
Yeah, the new maps looks really great. I'm in particular pretty excited about the night mode changes. They look really cool, and especially once the 3D buildings start coming to more places, those night mode buildings look particularly kind of stunning to my eye. I'm pretty excited for those to come here to Minneapolis or out to you in Chicago.
Yeah, it'll be really nice. I'm looking forward to it. The other thing we did this week is Federico actually published a story that he wrote for Club MacStories Weekly, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. And it was the first part in his series on his Obsidian setup. And Obsidian is a note-taking app that is not native. It's really based off of web technologies, which makes it a little bit of an adjustment to get to use at first. But the power of having those web technologies at your disposal is what really attracts Federico to it, and myself as well. And I know that you've been using it too, Alex. But in this first installment that we wanted to share with people to give them a taste for what can be done with Obsidian, Federico talks about things like the sync service, the core plugins, which the app has a series of plugins that you can turn on that are built in, and then they also have third-party plugins, which is one of the most powerful features of the app, as well as workspaces, which are kind of saved setups with notes and things that you can open on launch or open kind of mid-work stream. So if you've been curious about what Obsidian is all about, the thing I like about the way Federico's been tackling the app is that he brings a real kind of practical perspective on it that's not too deep in the weeds on, Zettelkasten methods and other note-taking systems that people get really lost in sometimes, I think. And it's more of like, here's a very practical way that I use it. Maybe it will fit with the way you work too. So that was on the site this week as well.
Yeah. He's really starting with just a high-level overview here on this one. which I think is a great introduction for people who have been hearing us talk about Obsidian on and off pretty frequently recently, and are wondering what it is just kind of a writing app, because this doesn't go super into all the in-depth stuff that Obsidian can do. I think Federico is saving all of that just for club members, but you can start with this, and if you kind of get a good sense of the app, then you might have to consider signing up for the club so you can dig into the rest of the because he's going really in depth with his advanced setup in the club newsletters.
Yes, very good way to sell that, Alex. I appreciate you pimping the club.
I do what I can.
Thank you. Everybody should be a member, and if you're not, check it out. We'd love to have you. All right, Alex, why don't you tell me a little bit about Things? Things added a new feature this week. This is version 3.14, I think.
Yes. So this week, Things added support for Markdown syntax in their notes. So this is the notes that are attached to tasks, which Things has had for quite a while, but you can now use full Markdown syntax as you're writing your notes among all of your to-do lists. And so this kind of, it's a pretty interesting direction for a task manager to go, where it's really kind of opens up a whole new realm of things that you can think about doing in the Things app by combining kind of your text or your, any sort of writing. I'm probably not going to write any like articles in this, but you can kind of write out quite a bit of stuff alongside your to-dos. And so you might be planning out some kind of big project, perhaps, and alongside that project, you can now write out some very much more advanced kind of formatted text describing what you're thinking through, which can be a really good new way to look at your task lists.
Yeah, I really enjoyed using this. I think it's interesting kind of in the context of the story we just talked about, which is Obsidian, where, for instance, Federico has done a thing where he has integrated the Todoist task manager into his Obsidian setup. This is kind of the flip side of that, where you can actually integrate your Markdown editor into your task manager. And while I don't think I, like you, would actually write a story in Things, you absolutely could do that if you wanted to. It's got all the basic Markdown syntax you would expect, plus even some things like special syntax for highlighting, which I know is not part of the core Markdown syntax, but is one of those add-ons that you see frequently. All right, a couple of news items worth covering. Billie Eilish did a short film with Apple Music that visualizes spatial audio. And I really feel for the people trying to describe spatial audio with video, because it's not something you can see, and it's not something you can really hear on a YouTube video either. But this does a really nice job. I mean, it's Billie Eilish doing a short performance of a couple of her songs, and they use mirrors to kind of make it look like she's multiplying as she sings, which gives you the sense of, spatial audio and what it's meant to do. So it was a well done video and worth checking out if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I think it's a very good way to visualize that. And also, if you're a fan of Billie Eilish, it is a very Billie Eilish video.
That is true. That is very true. All right. And the last thing is, I wanted to mention that Joanna Stern at the Wall Street Journal had a video interview with Craig Federighi about the new child safety features that are coming in the fall to Apple's OSs to combat CSAM and other things. And there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of confusion about these features. And I think Joanna does a really good job of both explaining it and letting Apple try to explain what it is they're trying to accomplish. So, worth checking out. I mean, if you don't want to get too deep in the weeds and the technical stuff, which gets technical and complex very fast, I think this is a nice overview, and it's only about 12 minutes long. All right, let's move on to Club MacStories. This week, Federico has been playing classic Nintendo games on his iPhone using the emulator Delta, which is by Riley Testis. And Riley created he's the creator of AltStore, which is a way to sideload apps. And one of the most popular sideloaded apps using AltStore is Delta, which is his emulator, and allows you to play Nintendo ROMs on your iPhone. And so Federico went over that. It's a beautifully designed, fully native, great app with haptic feedback and all that sort of thing in the buttons. Then I did a tip where I kind of compared and contrasted the way Federico and I are both using the app Sofa, which is a media organizer, because it's the thing about that app is it's incredibly flexible in the way it can be used. And this tip kind of gave me the opportunity to show a couple of different ways it can be approached, which shows off that flexibility. Then finally, I did my iPad Air home screen, which I haven't done a home screen for, turns out, almost a year and a half on Club MacStories. So I did my Air home screen because that's probably the most interesting home screen I have, because it's a weird blend of both work stuff and play stuff. So got that out today as well. Alex, we also had an interview on App Stories this week.
Yes.
And that was with Malin Sundberg. Malin Sundberg is the creator of Orbit, a time tracking and invoicing app, which I know I had recommended to you at one point to check out. And it's a really good interview because Malin built that app using Swift UI. So it's a great look at how that can be done both on the Mac as well as other platforms. And unlike a lot of developers, the Orbit team started on the Mac and then went to the iPhone and iPad. So different path than many of the developers we've talked to in the past, which made it a really, really interesting conversation. Alex, this week's sponsor for this episode of Unwind and all of MacStories is UpNote. And UpNote is an elegant and powerful note-taking app that works across every major platform, making it the perfect solution for your note-taking needs. It's designed to make taking wherever you are, wherever you go, combining a beautiful interface and fluid workflow for a refined note-taking experience. The app works on iOS, Android, the Mac, and Windows, which makes it an excellent solution if you're someone who needs to work across all of those platforms, because everything syncs and super reliably. UpNote works on and offline, so you're always able to capture your thoughts. With colorful themes and a long list of font choices, organizing notes into notebooks, and pinning and bookmarking them for quick access later. Plus, there's a web clipper extension so you can quickly save links and content from the web. There's a focus mode that eliminates distractions, and there's even a great solution for longer notes, a table of contents feature that makes navigating through those notes super easy. Switching to UpNote is super easy because you can easily import from Evernote, Markdown, and other formats as well. And of course, you can get your information out later as well if you need to. Now is the perfect time to try UpNote because you can get it for 30% off for a limited time. Just go to getupnote.com to check out this deal and all the details. Our thanks to UpNote for their support of Unwind and MacStories. All right, Alex, before we get to our picks, I want to talk to you a little bit about Arcade, because Arcade has really been releasing a lot of apps recently, and we got a couple of apps. We'll get to those in a minute. But the coming soon is kind of interesting. There's an app called Zen Pinball Party, Zookeeper World, and Castlevania. A version of Castlevania is coming out as well. We don't have dates on these things yet, but they should be, based on prior pre-announcements from Arcade, they should be within the next several weeks, I would think. Have you taken a look at any of these, like Zen Pinball?
Yeah, I took a look at the screenshots from Zen Pinball Party, and it really just looks like a classic pinball experience, and you can honestly just never go wrong with those. I used to play pinball games way back in the day, I think during school on the old PCs, and they were always a blast. And this one looks like a really fun new implementation of that coming to iOS devices on Apple Arcade. And I'm looking forward to trying this out. They have a bunch of themes based on DreamWorks and Hasbro movies like Kung Fu Panda or How to Train Your Dragon, and those look fun. And just the animations look really well done. And yeah, I don't know, there's not much more to say other than pinball, and I don't think there's much more that you need.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, In terms of the ones that came out today, I think it's worth mentioning WordWeb because that's one that was previewed a while back, and one of the developers of this is Adrian DeJong, who, if you know that name, he was one of the developers behind Hidden Folks, which is one of our favorite games on iOS. And the WordWeb is a word game, of course. I don't have a good sense for what exactly the mechanics of this game are yet because I haven't tried it, but it really looked intriguing to me. I like the art design in it, and I'm going to be checking it out over the next few weeks. And then the other thing that came out was part 2 of Fantasian. This is kind of an interesting story because Fantasian came out. It's a diorama-based RPG adventure game that came out in chunks, and part 1 came out, it's probably been a couple of months, maybe a few months ago now, and part 2 is significantly larger than part 1. A lot more going on here, new bosses, new mechanics, all kinds of different things, including it's something like 50 original dioramas and 34 tracks from the composer of the game. So a big expansion that's worth checking out if you like that game.
Yeah, that game looks great. The graphics are fantastic. And I don't know, I'm going to definitely be checking that one out. It looks like it's, also just has some really good graphics and some new kind of quest-driven stuff. It sounds like the game kind of takes a different turn in the second half than it did in the first half, which will be interesting to take a look at.
All right, let's go to our Unwind picks. And I know you've got another TV show for me this week, and I've got a movie. So we're gonna give you some video to watch this weekend.
Oh, yeah. I am kicking things off with Ted Lasso Season 2.
Very good.
You just can't go wrong with Ted Lasso. I know everyone's talking about it, but that's because it deserves it. I love this TV show. It is one of my favorites in modern times. Maybe one of my favorites ever. I don't know. I'll have to see how it settles over time for me. But man, Ted Lasso is a great show, and they have done it again in Season 2. So far, at least. We're only about halfway through the season. Maybe a little less even, because I think this season is going to go 12 episodes instead of 10 episodes. But so far, so good. I haven't watched the last weeks, and I think you're 2 behind. But it is just, it's been going, it's just been bringing more of the Ted Lasso that we love, and not in a kind of boring way that feels the same, but it's fresh, and it's just going really well. If you watch Season 1, then you will love Season 2. And if you haven't watched Ted Lasso yet, I cannot recommend it enough. This show, I keep recommending this to people, and I talk this show up more than I talk up most shows, and I have yet to have a single person watch it and not love it. And that's fairly rare. I feel like usually at least one of the people, if I can get someone to watch a show, somebody will be not super enthused about it. But Ted Lasso has broken that streak. Everyone loves Ted Lasso, and you will too. So you should definitely check that out.
I will have you know that I am the original Ted Lasso hipster because I watched Season 1 beginning on day 1 when it came out. And was telling people telling people they should watch it the minute I got done with episode 1. And some people, like our friend Mr. Vitici, waited forever. He watched, I think he came back and re-recommended Ted Lasso after he finally watched it earlier this summer. And then he was upset because of the incident at the very beginning of Season 2 with the dog during the game at the very, very beginning. But Alex, should he stick with it or should he abandon it based on his unhappiness with that first episode?
Oh, no. He must stick with it, of course. Football is life.
All right.
But it is also death.
Sometimes it is, at least for our canine friends. Well, hopefully he's sticking with it. I haven't talked to him about it in a little while, but I'll have to check in with him. All right. My pick this week is The Suicide Squad, which is on HBO Max and in theaters in the U.S. at least. Came out day and date for both. I don't think it's doing particularly well at the box office. I guess I'm kind of not surprised because if you have the option to watch this on HBO Max, if you subscribe to HBO Max, it is a pretty good movie to watch on TV. I think it would do. I guess the experience would be good on the big screen, but I enjoyed watching it at home. Really good action movie, kind of absurd in so many ways, the shark character, and the weasel are both really, really bizarre and strange. And it's just the movie is just kind of off the chain the entire time from the get go when they're storming the beaches of a small island to the very conclusion when they're combating a giant space starfish. So with it, right?
Yeah, I watched this movie and I loved this movie. It's, it's not super high cinema, but it is just a very fun movie. I was just kind of laughing the whole time. The weasel cracked me up, man. It was just, I don't know why. I watched this with my sister and brother-in-law and my girlfriend, and they weren't quite as entertained by the weasel as I was, but something about the just crazy animated face with the giant eyeballs, but then paired with the fact that it's just like some person in a weasel costume for the bottom part.
Right.
It's just, I found it hilarious. I loved the weasel character. Just very funny. And the whole movie was just, it was just fun and actually pretty funny in a way that I feel like the DC movies have been missing a little bit in the past, but this is kind of following Birds of Prey, which was the first DC movie I watched that I was really like, all right, I'm starting to feel this cinematic universe. I like what you guys are trying to do here. And this one follows that one in terms of it's actually a pretty good movie, and it's just really funny. And so I highly recommend this movie. I don't know that I would quite go to the theater for it. We watched it on HBO Max because it was free there. And I don't know. We had a great time watching it with the family just here at home. Obviously, it would probably be fun to watch in a theater as well. But, with HBO just kind of giving them away for free as opposed to taking the Disney route of charging you for it at home, I struggle to see some of these why you would not just sit down and have a good night watching it.
Right. I agree. A fun pandemic fact was Birds of Prey was the last movie I saw in a theater before the pandemic, I think.
Oh man.
Yeah. On that happy note, I want to thank our sponsor for this episode again, and that is UpNote. Of course, you can find me and Alex over at MacStories.net. Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me at Instagram at AJGUYOT, AJ or on Twitter at _AlexGuyot, AlexGuyot.
All right, great. And of course, you can find me where I'm the same over on Twitter and Instagram, which is at John Voorhees, JohnVoorHs. Talk to you later, Alex.
See you, John.